Moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we want to discuss the treasurer's report.
First page, you'll see a new format for the annual collections report. So if you would just take a minute to look at that and let us know if we hit the mark with what you were looking to learn.
Looks good. Yeah.
And then the following pages are what you're used to seeing: balance sheet, profit and loss, and funds available list.
Is there anything you guys want to draw our attention to on the treasurer's report?
Holmes and Turner is still in the process of auditing our books for the fiscal year that closed June 30th. So they'll be at the next meeting to report.
Okay. Okay. Motion to accept the treasurer's
Motion to
report.
accept the treasurer's report.
Motion and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Yeah, sure, we go through that part. Just with the financial report. Okay. All right, now we'll get to old business. Oath of office. Welcome, Mr. Buzz Davis, to the board. Very excited to have you here. It is just an update item. I see you've already taken your oath of office. So, mind introducing yourself to members of the audience?
Yeah. My name is Buzz Davis. I ran for a position Hey Buzz. Would you be interested in I've always had this expression, one door closes. I was all over it. I'm really excited to be part of the board and to serve the community, and I'll do my best. You know, my background's in planning. I can't think of a better time to be involved with the community with our big planning coming up. So thanks for your support. And I look forward to working with you.
Excellent. Well, we're very excited to have you on board. So, here. All right. Election of officers.
Secretary's position, and that's Mike feels strongly he'd like to do it. So that's my motion.
Okay, there has been a motion and a second to have myself serve as the chair, Steve Johnson as the vice chair, Buzz as the secretary, and Sarah as the treasurer, and Mike Schultz as the director.
He's on vacation.
He's on vacation. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I think Mike So, how you doing, Mike?
Yeah, I did. You know, when Buzz speaks, if he could speak closer to the microphone or a little louder, that would help. I can't hear Buzz real well.
Did you hear the motion?
Yeah, I heard the motion and I said aye.
Okay, great. All right.
Excellent.
If you don't hear us, just give us a heads up.
Okay.
All right. Next item of business, Big Sky Community Housing Trust Project update. Mr. Kent. All right, Laura. Would you mind introducing yourself to get your name on the record?
Yes, Laura C. Fang. I'm the newly appointed director for the Big Sky Community Housing Trust. And Mike, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Thank you, Laura.
So with the support of the Resort Tax Funds, I joined the organization working for HRDC starting at the beginning of October. So you guys allocated some funds for my position that covered both my salary benefits, and I've got an office now, just moving in there this week, right across from the post office. So above, of course, of a different color. So that's where I'll be operating out of. So my background, I've been here in Big Sky full time, moved in a year ago, August. I've been coming out here on property out here for over 20 years. Still own some rental property out here, but now have a full-time home. So I was happily retired, but encouraged to consider taking this position to try to help with our workforce housing problem that we have in the community. So I've got a business background running automotive factories for many years, and then after I retired from that, I shifted gears into nonprofit and was running a Red Cross chapter in Ohio for 4 years before moving out here. So I've got a little for-profit and non-profit experience that I hope can help us solve these problems. So I wanted to give you a little report on the funds that you guys allocated, where they stand. So the first chunk we talked about for hiring me. You also offered up $100,000 for the down payment assistance program. So to date, we've had only 2 applicants apply to the HRDC process for the funds, and unfortunately both were not qualified due to their level of earnings and some other situation. I think part of the reason we haven't had a whole lot of applicants is we haven't really got the word out there yet. So we do have a communication plan moving forward towards helping people understand that the down payment assistance isn't just for folks considering the Meadowview property, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but for anybody who fits in the eligible category in finding housing that they might need some assistance with. So we're going to do some more update and communication to the community to help them understand that.
Laura, quick,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt you, but have you been to any of the MLS meetings with the realtors?
I have.
Okay, great. I was going to say that's a good way to get the word
Yeah,
out.
met with them about 3 weeks ago to kind of give them both a Meadowview update and the down payment assistance.
Awesome.
So that they'll know the direct people. So one of the things the process HRDC has, and they're my boss, is a wait list process that people can get qualified for either getting into our Meadowview project or getting into the down payment assistance program. So they have to take some classes, hours worth of homework classes, and then also have a one-on-one counseling session, which is almost like a pre-qual. So it's really getting someone's financial information and help and direct them towards what they might be, what might fit for them. That's what gets them qualified into either program. So I've spent a lot of time the last couple of weeks kind of sorting, cleaning up, recontacting everyone on that list, because some people have been there since 2016. It feels that long. So it's to figure out, are they still interested? Do they still qualify? So that we can have a priority order as we're offering people properties moving forward. So we got that really well cleaned up. We have about 32 people on that list right now who say they're interested in the Meadowview properties, which is really exciting. It looks like they're probably going to be qualified. So an update on that, you guys allocated funds, as you know, for the Meadowview property transfer from the current developers to HRDC. So where that sits right now is we're still in phase 1 of that process. You can see that the foundations are all in for a lot of the units back there behind fence courts. We have a bit of a construction delay a little bit for a variety of reasons, but we're still hoping to have those first units complete in April sometime. So that's why it's important we're working with potential buyers on figuring their game plan out there. The transfer of the contract from the developers to HRDC has not occurred yet. And for a variety of reasons, there's been a few delays. Some of working through the covenants, of defining how everything's going to work. So right now, that's probably going to be almost March 1st before that actual closing happens for the property transfers. And at that point, there'd be a disbursement of funds. But we're also still working out so that there aren't any delays in construction of whether there'll need to be a draw earlier just to be able to keep construction moving along even before the actual closing occurs. So we're working through those details as we speak. As I mentioned, we're excited to know that we have about 32 people confirmed. So there's going to be, it's a 2-phase project. Phase 1 of construction, like I said, hopefully done maybe end of April. And phase 2 probably wouldn't be done until end of 2019. But it's still not dragging out there too long. And for some of our clients, that's almost a better timeline for them in terms of where their leases might run out, where getting themselves ready to move. So there's a total of 42 bedroom units in the complex and 12 studio that would be available that are kind of over a 2-car garage at about size. So it's more of a single folks in there, but very different price points. That appeals, and it's interesting how the wait list is breaking down and doing some analysis of, well, do we have the right combination of people, family sizes fitting what's going to be available. So we're working through that right now to kind of see where we get. And that's about it. Any other questions you guys might have?
How many units are in phase 1?
It is a total of 18, Brian said right, in phase 1. Which has some studios, some 2 bedrooms.
So they got rid of the 3-bedroom concept.
The 3-bedroom option just couldn't make it financially, and so that's why they kind of split out the ADU, which becomes the studio apartment. And we definitely had clients wanting that price point. You have people want 3 bedrooms too, but working in this.
Yeah. What's the square footage of both of the two? Just out of curiosity.
Brian, can you help with this? I didn't see the other.
2.5 bath duplexes. They're all duplexes now with the studio apartment. Are 1,001 square feet. Creatively, we still are. Studio apartments are 350 square feet. Every unit has a single car garage. So you basically have 3 of the walkouts that you can see from the ball fields. So you'll have 3 studios available in phase 1, and then the rest for 15. So you got 6, 12, 15, 2-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,001 square feet. And they have water, sewer, power, services, everything to them right now.
Any other questions for Laura?
That's Mike.
Mr. Scholes, any other questions for the Big Sky Community Housing Trust?
No, fine. Thanks for the update.
Laura, I want to just welcome you to this position, and we're very excited to see where you're going to take the Big Sky Community Housing Trust. I don't think anybody's as excited as Mr. Kent. So thanks for marshaling it to this stage. So anyway, welcome and thank you. Women in Action, Mrs. Reeves.
I gave you a memo describing our accounting and bookkeeping problem. So I don't want to go over that again, but do you have any questions about it?
Yeah, Kevin?
Mr. Scholes,
Kevin,
please.
yeah, I have a question. Okay, thanks for the update, but what exactly did the contract between BSRA and WIA have as the payments during this period? What was the total dollar amount?
Do you mean the allocation?
Yeah, the allocation, what does that, yeah, there's a contract that goes with that. What was the amount on that? You have, I couldn't tell the way all the,
For the year 2016, 2017,
yes.
I believe it was 50,000. But I'd have to look to Whitney and
Yeah.
Kristen to confirm that.
It's in the resolution.
Okay.
Was it broken up for this program, specifically what this program was to get?
I do not believe so. It was under the, for 2016, 2017, I believe that is when the contract changed to help cover the overhead expenses for running the mental health and substance abuse counseling program. Prior to that, I believe it was limited to MSU's expenses. That's my understanding verbally from Jan O'Connor, our prior executive director. I would have to actually go read those contracts because I'm not familiar with them.
I believe it was.
Yeah, I guess I was asking that just to see that, you know, with all of this coming and going, if it was specified how much of the money that came out of the allocation for this program, I thought that would maybe help clear up what we were obligated to because otherwise it's kind of a moving target with some of these numbers.
Well, I would, again, I mean, we probably should go back and look at that more carefully at the contracts, but in talking to Jen, up until 2016, we were only allocated funds for the actual cost of MSU's program for providing mental health. And after 2016, we began submitting, I guess at the encouragement of you guys, some of actually all of our overhead expenses for that particular year, which includes advertising the program, and the hours that our executive director spends on managing the program, which have been pretty considerable, mostly because we've been looking for ways to expand the program. We have waiting lists for both of our practitioners.
But so in 17, 18, the number wasn't broken out. It was in a lump sums. Is that what you're saying?
Talked about 17, 18 in the memo, but in 17 and 18, when I looked at our last submission, we only submitted expenses through May of that year. We didn't submit June expenses. So I looked back to see what our June expenses were, and they're approximately $5,300 for that month, and the client payment fees for that year, 2017, 2018, are $4,341. So I would like to make the case that we used the client payment fees in that particular year to cover June in retrospect. But 2016, 2017, it's very clear to me that we submitted all of our overhead expenses and were reimbursed for them. So therefore, it's the feeling that me as treasurer and our board agrees that the client payment credits, $5,517, should have been reduced from our submissions. And I just want to say, I'm hoping to clear this issue up. It all resulted from the fact that we pay MSU in advance for the program and you pay us in arrears, and the reporting where these client payment fees show up are coming in on the advanced budget reports. They're not actually advanced, but the actual budget reports, and those are not part of what has ever been submitted to the Resort Tax Board for the arrears payment. Now I'm going to fix this so that we're going to be paying off of those budget reports.
Okay, I
read through this twice, and I'm still confused exactly about what is the, the 2-sentence request and how we need to fix this for you guys. Okay, because obviously we're big supporters of what you want to do and want to help you out, and I don't see that there's any major issues when I read through things, and I just want to make sure, what do we need to take action on that helps you out to clean this up for you?
I guess the 2-sentence request is, do you want us to reimburse the Resort Tax District for the $5,517 in client payment fees resulting from that 2016-2017 year? Or are you willing to, quote, forgive it based on the fact that
you
our
covered June
overhead,
expenses.
we had covered all of our own overhead expenses, or raise the funds to do that for the years up until from 2010 when the program started up until 2016.
Okay,
Motion?
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we forgive them for the $5,517.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Motion passes unanimous. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Kevin?
Mr. Schultz.
Kevin, I just think to avoid anything like this, not only with we or anyone else, we just have to be careful to make sure when we write after the allocation that the contract specifically spells out what monies are used for and what those totals are. If that was done here, our only question would have been were they asking for more or less than their contract and such. So we just have to be careful about how we write those.
Correct, yeah, thanks.
Well, and clearly the intent is to fix this going into the
Yeah.
future, so
Yeah.
we're on a consistent basis, so
Yeah.
shouldn't happen again.
Thank you, guys. Okay. Next item of business, check signing and online bill pay procedure. Thanks for making the adjustments with me based on what we talked about last meeting. And entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to approve the check signing online bill pay procedure.
Second.
Motioned and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Updated bank account signers.
I would make a motion to update the bank account. We already removed Jamie. We need to add Buzz to the account.
And
Whitney.
And
Whitney.
Whitney, sorry. Yep, and Whitney.
Second.
I'll second.
the motion and second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Next item of business is defensive lobbying subcommittee. For members of the audience, this is as long as I remember, the resort tax is always hired to defensive lobbyists to go into the legislative session. It is applies. It's defensive lobbying. It's to keep an eye on bills that could impact the resort tax. In the past, Mona Jameson has been our defensive lobbyist as well as our counsel. With Mona retiring, we're in the market for a new person to watch bills for us in Helena and let us know of any bills that could impact the resort tax. So, do I hear any volunteers for the defensive lobbying subcommittee to work with what's the name of our defensive lobbyist? I'm sorry.
Daryl James.
Daryl James. We have already hired Daryl James to be out here in December for the area and looking for volunteers from our board to work with them.
Just,
Our scope of work with Daryl James, I believe in January, he provides us a list of bills that he's aware of that somehow impact the resort tax. And then every 2 weeks, he provides us an update on those bills and any new bills that will be introduced. And so I assume the scope of work, and Mike, Mr. Schultz can chime in because he's been active in this in years past, is really just paying attention to that list, talking with Daryl James and seeing are there certain items that we need to go up there and testify on? What do we want Daryl to testify on? So it's just staying on top of it.
For what it's worth.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, go ahead and comment, Mike.
Well, it's pretty much that. It's important when bills that do affect us, whether we support those bills or not support them, and we have someone that's watching over that. It's not generally a large number of bills, but when there's a lot of these local option tax bills coming along, many of them are somewhat patterned after the resort tax. But if there's overlapping jurisdictions, that needs to be clarified pretty plainly. If it would cut into or change any of the rules that we work by and any of the legislation. Generally, it's not too big of a deal, but you never know. Mona always would have 2 or 3 bills that would come along, but and they can be. There's going to be a bill about having a sales tax this year again. If there was a sales tax, how does that affect the resort tax and that such? We have to stay on top of that.
Yeah, I would agree with those comments. I would also point out that liquor license laws in this state are an absolute joke and need some serious attention. Liquor licenses lead to fairly significant resort tax collections around here. So keeping an eye on what's going on with liquor taxes or liquor licensing laws. And there's typically a run at trying to update them to, the 21st century every session. And the defensive lobbying organization for the Montana Association of Tavern Owners is successful in shooting them all down. But just keeping an eye on that is something that I would appreciate some attention on, because it has significant impact on our community and our entity.
Yes, please, with you.
The subcommittee, I think, would also allow the board to more quickly react, as opposed to the lobbyist waiting for the next board meeting for direction. So hopefully the board would give the subcommittee power to be able to direct the lobbyist.
Well, and what Whitney's saying is, if something happens, Daryl's going to make a call and say somebody needs to be in Helena tomorrow at 8 o'clock. That is the way this works, and that stuff is relatively unpredictable. Sometimes, you got to be able to just do that. So having said that, of course, I'll volunteer.
I was going to say, I hear one volunteer.
I
would volunteer also.
Okay, I heard Mr. Scholes and Mr. Johnson both volunteer for the subcommittee. And I'm sorry, I should have backed up. Is there any public comment on this item, Candace?
So is Daryl James the same Daryl James that's the executive director of the Montana Infrastructure Coalition?
Probably.
Just FYI that we as the Montana Chamber, as the Big Sky Chamber, are members of the Montana Infrastructure Coalition, which is run through the Montana Chamber. And Daryl does an amazing job at keeping us updated throughout legislative session on bills that impact legislative infrastructure, and we have a policy sheet of what that relates to. And so we're also happy to share that with this board. I know infrastructure obviously is on everyone's mind here, but he's been a terrific asset for us as an organization. Over the past, I think, 2 years, we've been involved with that.
Great.
So we should compare your target list with our target list in terms of what we're paying attention to on behalf of Big Sky. We should do that.
Perfect.
And if he is going to be in market, if there's any way you could let me know there's some other things on the infrastructure side that we want to chat with him about.
December 7th,
Thank you.
Mr. James will be in March. I'd make a
Kevin?
motion. Mr. Schultz, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just want to also mention, besides those that affect the resort tax, there's going to be a number of them because of the charging of the third party booking system and such. Both the Montana Hotel and Lodging Association is probably going to be bringing up a bill. I think most of those bills will be favorable to us, but until you see them, you don't know. There are some things going on at the Department of Revenue. They might have some bills also about being able to tax accommodations on the third party. So those are ones that we'll want to keep in touch with, because if they make the laws for the state accommodation tax, we'll want to make sure that they include the resort tax so we can collect the same revenues.
Great. I'd make a motion to appoint Mr. Johnson and Mr. Schultz as the subcommittee to work with Darrell James, our defensive lobbyist, and give.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say.
Sarah will happily second.
Yeah.
Better you than me.
As well as give the two of them the decision making if they need to react quickly with Darrell. It's been motioned in second. Is there any further board discussion?
I give you guys what you.
I was gonna say something about leasing a helicopter to get up there. I thought
It's not part of the motion.
Maybe some snow tires.
Is there any public comment? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, thanks, Mike and Steve, for doing that. Resort Tax Summit discussion, public comment.
Yeah, I just interested to hear what you have to say. Is there going to be a meeting here? Is it open to the public?
Yes, and yes, all our meetings are open to the public. It's November 30th. So sorry, this is a discussion line item. So that was all you have, Mr. Shaw. So first of all, thanks for organizing. We've got looks like a pretty good list of RSVPs. My question on the RSVPs is how many do we think will actually be here in person?
So far, we've only heard 2 or 3 that will be here in person, but I'm going to send out another email and follow up. If there's any. So there's a few from West that I believe will be here in person.
Are you gonna do it right here?
Yes.
And what time was that? 2 p.m.?
2 p.m.
2 p.m. on Friday, November 30th. And for members of the audience, this is the 3rd annual.
That's right.
I think the majority of this board will be here, yeah. Easy for us.
Yeah, I just saw all the people that were on there, so.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have any other comments.
We may have success getting people here in person if a board member or 2 would like to place calls. It is a priority to have people here. If not, okay.
Yeah, my question on having people here is we have the meeting started at 2 and we talked about it would be a 3-hour meeting. That's a really long conference call for people to be on. And I know that it is what it is. That's a long time to be on the phone. It's different when you're here in person and you can take a break and come back. So I think, we start the meeting at 2. We have an agenda. We know we got to stop at 5, but if it gets done earlier, it gets done earlier. It was just a comment. Obviously, it's great to have people here in person, but it's really hard to ask people to drive.
We're just going to 5. If people show up, we have no plans to take them to dinner or anything. Or we'll
We have
handle that on the fly?
we have a cocktail hour planned, at 6 o'clock across the street at the Big Sky Real Estate Discovery Center. So that was the only social hour planned.
I'm going to make
Great.
With my logistics guy hat on, we're happy to help get a lodging promotional rate to help incentivize folks to come and stay overnight. We'd like that would help bring more people here in person. You know, some of the periods we're still just coming out of the shoulder, so I'm just very much about that. We would even entertain possibly hosting lunch if that would help folks come earlier. So just let us know how we can help.
Thank you for that, Candace. Appreciate it. All right, any other discussion? Thanks, guys, for working on it. Community Strategic Plan RFP, Mr. Johnson to Mr. Davis. I guess first, is there any public comment on this agenda item? And there'll be another public comment.
We're gonna invite some public comments.
Great, okay, hearing no public comment, Mr. Johnson.
I'll just give you the capsule. So at our last meeting, we looked at and approved the RFP. The RFP was sent to 5 potential bidders. 3 responded with proposals and 2 declined. We looked at the written proposals. Those proposals were also available here in the office for anybody to look at, and we had some customers for that. I would summarize the proposals that we got by saying they were all strong firms with, pretty respectable depth of experience in doing exactly what we were talking about doing. All the proposals were responsive to the RFP in terms of the approach that they laid out, addressing the concerns we had. And having said that, we did get 3 kind of different approaches, all plausible, but each firm proposed a slightly different approach, largely in terms of how they plan to interact with the community. All the proposals were also within budget. Last time we authorized $100,000 for this, and we all are within that limit, so we're okay there. On December 7th, we met here in the office to conduct phone interviews. That process involved Whitney, Buzz, and me. And then also participating in that process were Sierra Wolf from BSCO and Candace Carr-Strauss from the Chamber. Before we started our calls with the 3 bidders, we had kind of a, get your heads together over lunch session about what did we want to talk about, how were we thinking about each proposal, what did we want to pursue with each of the individual firms. So I thought that was very productive. Following that, we had 3 one-hour phone calls with an hour in between to kind of digest what we had learned. And it was particularly satisfying at the end of that to see everybody around the table agreeing that there was one firm that clearly stood out. And so, our recommendation is that we engage Logan Simpson to do this. They're also doing work, some work in Bozeman, but also doing work of a very similar nature down in Jackson. We were particularly impressed with their approach to engaging the community and their enthusiasm for the project. And I would, Buzz and Whitney and Candace and Sarah should all chime in as well. But I'll leave it at that as far as my comments.
I was impressed with their proposal mainly because of their experience. Their unique way of reaching out to the community. And one of the things that we were really concerned about was being able to touch everybody who's got 2 or 3 jobs and don't have much time. They really go out of their way to make this accessible to everyone. And I think that was a key selling point for all of us, certainly for me. The quality of this work is going to be around the quality participation you get in the community. But I thought that days in that regard. So that's what
Ms. Whitney?
We were fortunate. All three proposals were very strong and very different. Even the way that they formatted and submitted their proposals and handled the interviews. And like Steve said, I'll just share at the end, I'll reiterate that it was a clear decision at the end.
And comments?
Yeah, Logan Simpson stood out because of their articulation. So they had a very strong skill set, and they were able to articulate that skill set and how to implement it into Big Sky. And so that was a really strong point that we recognized. Also, they had vast experience with various political landscapes, which I think is very unique in Big Sky, and they had dealt with other communities that had other uniquenesses on that without having that governmental leadership. I think that's absolutely critical for that entity to be able to come in and be successful. They also did their research the best. They put in a proposal that understood priorities of the community, understood the demographics of the community, understood the different segmented populations of the community. So they wanted it, and it was very clear, and they showed us that, and that always, always in interviews scores high with me. So I saw that with them too. So those are kind of the strong points that stood out, and I fully support their recommendation as
Candace.
I want to echo all of that. And then I would just add that deep understanding of the paradigm of a mountain resort community and who the players are, how they interact, how they're interconnected, and how the success of the community is dependent on all of them working together and making sure that through this process that happens, and engagement from all of those parties. So that was critical. And then the second one, having done tours of master planning and strategic planning over the course of the last year, their use of technology, not only through the process, but to have after the process is completed to continue to inform new members who move to this community, which is happening all the time, so that it's not just a snapshot in time captured in a report for right now current residents, but as we move forward and grow as a community, it can be updated, it can be evolved, it can be amended, but it's available for everyone then to look at and understand the process and what went through that process and what came out of that process as new community members. Because I think not only is that important that we do this now as a community, but as we continue to grow, we continue to engage new people in the process, and they provide the tools that I think will really help you. So I was very impressed. And some texting capabilities that, as mentioned, are other tools that really engage like lower income populations, the youth who are using texting as a method of communication. So they really embraced today the way different segments communicate, which I think will help us, as Buzz said, be more successful in getting as many people as possible to participate in
Just one last point. They were one firm that actually sent somebody here to spend a day in Big Sky. And so a representative of the firm met with us in the office for a discussion of about an hour. And then I personally drove that person all around the area to show them what was going on. Notably, I took them over the top back into Moonlight. I took them up Spanish Peaks so that we could see what was going on up there, the big hole in the ground, the Yellowstone Club. So, and had a lot of conversation along the way as well. But I mean, spend enough time to, get to know what was going on around here and endured a long drive with me in a car. So they're not done with us yet. But again, it was a demonstration of an effort. And I think, the conversation that we had was clearly reflected in the proposal. I mean, he was listening and taking good notes.
That's right.
What do they look like for cost?
They were right in the middle.
They were right in the middle. They also have some options, okay? And the options, I mean, we asked them to detail what the options would cost, and they're in the nature of 5,000 for this and 7,000 for that. So it's relatively small stuff. I mean, I think we need to, our next step is to tell them they got the work and then meet with them to negotiate a final contract that details what we do and want to include. But it will all still be within the budget limit that we have authorized for the project.
To entertain a motion.
You want me to make it?
Go ahead, Mike.
I'd make a motion to approve the committee's recommendation of Logan Simpson.
Second.
It's been motioned and seconded. Any public comment? Any further board discussion? The only thing I would stress, and I've brought this up in the past, is I'm really hopeful that through this process that, there's a strategic plan, but there's also a financial plan that matches that. So we actually have a clear action. We can see how to get to the goal. And that's my concern with some strategic planning efforts that I've participated in the past, and not necessarily here, is that you have these lofty goals, but how do we actually attain it? And I'm just really hoping through the process we get a 10-year, here's where we want to go, here's what it's going to cost to get there, and here's the sources of those funds. So just want to keep.
We have the strongest of all of the end results, and they called it, instead of an action plan, a project plan.
Great.
So they're actually going to outline projects and players, who all is involved, how much those cost, all the different potential revenue streams, which felt really concrete to the group. So they were very strong in that.
Excellent.
I would just comment, once we approve this motion, hold on to your socks.
Right. I like to hear that. I'm excited.
We've got to negotiate a contract. We also have to fit this into a calendar. A lot of stuff is going to get into motion, and the formation of a steering committee is going to be a very important early effort as well. So stand by.
No, and on that point, Steve, I'm glad you brought it up. I think the steering committee is very critical, and just for the members of the audience, for those who haven't been here for the last couple meetings discussing this is an effort I feel like the Resort Tax Board is birthing, but wants others to help raise it, and we would really like to have a good steering committee of cross-section members of this community to help work with this consultant. So at the end of the day, we have a strategic plan that has been well represented by the members of this community. So it's been motioned and seconded. It's been discussed. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Buzz and Steve, thank you very much for your work on this. Appreciate it.
Looks like Betsy joined the call.
Okay, great. So, welcome, Betsy.
Good morning. How is everybody?
Doing well. We just got done discussing agenda item J, Community Strategic Plan. Our next agenda item is Scope of Work Action Plan. It's a discussion. I would also, if it's okay with the board, I would like to combine this with the staffing, the structure discussion that happened under new business. No, I'm sorry, I should have noted that when you sent me the draft agenda, but these can't be talked about in isolation. So is it okay with it? I make a motion to move staffing, this structure up to be discussed with Scope of Work Action. Any public comment? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. Do you mind if I talk for a second? When Whitney's good. Whitney and Sarah and Tristan, please jump in. First of all, I just want to give a big kudos to our team here on staff, Whitney and Kristen, and I would say in the course of 2 meetings with these guys, it's really become evident that this board asks a lot of this team, and it's of my opinion we haven't been giving them the resources to accomplish the missions that we send them on, and we're so quick to come up with the strategic plan and ideas and walk away, and it's left for these two to try to get it done. And so what Whitney has prepared for us is the Scope of Work Action Plan, and I think the most appropriate thing to look at are the things that really won't get done with our existing staffing model. There's a lot that won't get done with our existing staffing model. I don't want to go back and revisit the scope of work unless the board would like to. We've said some things that are priorities. I don't think those priorities have shifted. And so as we still want to get all this work done, and I'm kind of blending these two topics together. In order to get this work done, we need help. We need help here. To further opine, I've been guilty in my professional life of being late to staff up, and it's crushing on our team. And I feel the two proposals that we worked on with the team on how to staff sets us up well for the future. And I think it's long overdue. So I'm done talking. Sarah.
Yeah, no, we worked really hard on this with Whitney and with Kristen and just trying to find the best way to grow the resort tax office in an appropriate manner right now. We can't be proactive. We're consistently reactive. And it's by no fault of Whitney or Kristen. It's just, there's too much work for 1 3/4 time. It's just too much work. And it was one of my priorities, and I'm excited that we're talking about it this quickly, and I think that it's long overdue.
Whitney, is there anything you'd like to talk about in the scope of the work action plan before I dive into the two different staffing models that we have here?
No, you know me, I thoroughly laid it. So as long as everyone's reviewed what's there, I feel I've communicated what needs to be communicated. That the scope of work provided a specific example for me to put in front of the board, right? And it also, as I shared, laid out that there's a disconnect between the way that the office has been staffed historically and currently, and where the board is moving and the community is moving. And we've been trying to keep up for some time, but just the operational proficiency is not where it should be. So this is an opportunity for us to be on the same page through the scope of work, and I appreciated all of your input. And I think it really set us up and organized us for the next 18 months, that we all collectively know what our priorities are and what we're working towards, as opposed to agenda items coming on and falling off the agenda, and just kind of being at the will of time. We can more proactively address those. So I am excited about our scope of work, and if we can staff up, I'm excited to get it done too. That's all I have to say on scope of work. Take it.
So to accomplish the scope of work that we've asked of our team here, there's two staffing structures that Whitney's prepared after reviewing and discussing this with Sarah and I. And Mike, I'm looking at the staffing structure, page 2. I have it. Okay, just discussing the two options there. They're very similar options. I think the most notable change would be hiring a district manager to have a higher level position than currently or historically has happened here at the district. And then under that district manager, we have an operations officer, a compliance officer, and then we have two options on how to support the administration and the bookkeeping, and that's the only difference between option 1 and option 2. Option 1 would be to hire a full-time administration officer who would also handle the bookkeeping, and option 2 would be to hire a part-time admin person and then outsource the bookkeeping. So that is the difference between the two options. Sarah or Whitney, anything to?
Yeah, I think both are great options. I really like the idea of having a bookkeeper that's outsourced, that kind of has a different set of eyes on things. And my opinion is that's always a good thing. And maybe we'll find that there's not enough work for that, or, we can always try and make some adjustments. I think also, we've had some communication with Whitney about sometimes, we may be able to find like an interim district manager. I guess that's fairly common in this kind of public sector in this industry. Somebody who maybe has already done this type of work and is retired and has, can help fill the gap and help us really understand the best model. And so I'm thrilled with our options.
Make a motion that we accept option.
I'd like
Real-
to, there is kind
real
of an
quickly.
option 3 that Sarah mentioned.
Okay, there is an option 3, and I'm just trying to stick with, this is a discussion item. I don't think we can today make a motion and accept it just with how we've noticed it. But with that being said, I don't think there's anything wrong with advertising for some positions and starting immediately trying to fill these, and maybe at the next meeting we have some applicants. So I don't want to wait. We've waited too long, and so I appreciate that, but I just am trying to notice this as a discussion. Mr. Johnson.
I would just make a comment that we are living in the middle of a severely workforce constrained environment. So, I mean, we can talk all day long about boxes and pretty job descriptions. I mean, I think the fact of the matter is it's going to be dependent on who we can find. So I think I'm just kind of saying this by way of reinforcing your need. We got to test the waters here to see what we can do. And, you know, there's not a lot of free floating labor anywhere around here. So,
Well, I guess you know where I stand, but I think the sooner the better, especially now that we're moving into this planning effort. We did have a lot of conversation about that with the applicants, what role would be and what resources we would need on the side. So I do think this is real important that we move this quickly as we can. I'm still getting the lay of the land here, and I guess you have to indicate on the agenda that it's
Going to be action.
Is it possible that we're going to meet later this month, that we have a little action done before that session, so we can
Yeah, I'm happy too, if we want to schedule an interim meeting just to take care of this one business item to move it forward. I'm open to the board. Real quickly, since we're still in discussion on this, I'm in favor personally of option 2. I like 2 things about option 2. Steve hit on one of them. There's a lot of big labor shortage, as we know in Big Sky. And I'm more optimistic about finding a part-time administration office or admin person that would be willing to just work, somebody who could fit in 20 hours a week for us. I like that. I also like outsourcing bookkeeping. I like that transparency and that arm's length between our books and our staff. So those are the 2 things that I.
and that's a skill set that's difficult to keep in-house. I mean, just in the market we have around here, the good ones are working for the accounting firms.
Yeah. The other thing I'll draw the attention board to, Whitney put page 3 together at our request, just looking at what % of our expenses will go to operations. And you can see we've had some pretty big lows. This would get us closer to, the 2010 number, where we'd be at 6.3% of our expenses would be for operations. The note that I made on here is, resort tax collections historically, and we hope continue to outpace. We've seen 10 to 14% and increase in resort tax collection. So I think immediately that percentage would start going down. And not that I feel that we're overstaffing right now, but if we were to accept either of these models, we'd be setting ourselves up well for the next 5 years at least. Would that be safe, Whitney, if I were saying that? Unless the board really changes the scope. So I'm saying that percentage would go down, which I'd like to see. It's not at all. When you look at the historical numbers, Buzz, is all I'm. Yeah.
We can't afford not to do this.
You guys are doing good.
I mean, we will do things within reason, but I mean, we're not doing the job.
Yeah.
Today.
Any other further comments?
I have something to share, and then there's also public comment.
Yeah.
Oh, good, okay. So when I mentioned the option 3 about that interim manager, so Jim Dorr, who's the county administrator in Gallatin County, he mentioned that that is, like Sarah said, that's something that the public sector city managers do. They retire and then they go and take the encore jobs where they just contract for 6 months to 2 years is usually the window. And he said that Big Sky would be, an attractive place for someone like that. And the position could help us since it's never existed before. And there are no real parallels in local government for this position, believe it or not. It would help us just kind of have an interim step before we find a permanent person to kind of test the waters, potentially restructure the position, potentially restructure the office. I don't know. It just.
Did he have a name in mind?
He had a name of a company that I called and talked to someone, and they said they have 150 of these people waiting in the wings. You say the word, we'll send them out.
Well, see, I have a name in mind.
Oh.
I mean, I'll just blurt it out, and I don't know. Kim Buchanan
Oh, yeah,
just got elected out of a job.
yeah,
I mean, Allen County Treasurer.
yeah.
I mean,
That's an interesting idea.
that woman has some chops.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've not said anything to her, but I mean, I have a huge amount of respect for her. I think anybody who knows her would. But, I mean,
right.
That, it's commuting down to Big Sky and all that kind of stuff. But, it's an example of a person who might be available to do something like this.
Yeah.
In an interim stage,
Yeah.
maybe. Or it could become permanent, but it could have a contract to it. I just wanted to throw it out there.
The interim thing gives everybody a chance to try it out, right? I mean, does it work for us? Does it work for them? And, again, I have no specific knowledge with regard to Kim other than she is good
Got a lot of
people.
experience, yeah.
Huge amount of experience.
That's an interesting thought. Wendy, my thought on the interim is I want to cast a broad net, and I would run both tracks and see who we get before.
Great.
If you could get a great applicant who could be here for the long term. I have conviction that we need this district manager. So if we had a candidate that said, I only want to work for you for 2 years, we'd weigh that. So I think we run growth. So I'm open and would love more thoughts on whether or not I would be comfortable today authorizing advertising these positions. It doesn't obligate us to accept the staffing level. And so we could advertise it. And then at our next meeting, officially adopt this. I'm also open to having an interim meeting as soon as we could satisfy public notice laws and have it just to deal with the singular issue. So.
You want action in regard?
Well, I just wanted, is there a will? Yeah.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Let's stick our toe in the water.
On or both? I guess I was saying, do we want to have an interim meeting and just deal with this and then authorize the amendment to the budget and the new staffing model, and then you go full steam ahead on advertising? Or do we want to go ahead and authorize just advertising those positions right now and wait till our next monthly meeting to have an action item on this?
I like the idea of doing both, but I'm not out on the idea of having us all come in just to do one action item. But if we're gonna be here for this meeting later this month, then, and if that meets the requirement in terms of posting the agenda to the community.
Right.
I mean, if we're here and we can do this in 10 minutes, you guys have done your homework. It seems to me we're all on the same page.
In connection with the summit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Do a
Summit
meeting.
Decision. And
everybody's calendar's locked up.
Yep.
Try to do that again.
I'd be comfortable with that. If you can be patient for 2 weeks,
Yeah.
that would give us, I think that'd make it much cleaner.
Okay, great. And that will, the job descriptions as they are now, maybe I could lean on Sarah to help me with it because they're task-based as opposed to kind of big picture. And I don't want to misrepresent the board and its needs. So I think that there's room to improve that job description before we start. The administrative position, straightforward, right?
Yeah.
But the district manager position is.
Yeah.
a little bit more
I
abstract.
can do the 26th or 27th. before, so right before that meeting, we can meet.
Wonderful.
27th is probably better for me.
Okay.
Because the 26th is my first day back in the office, but I'm available to
Thank you.
kind of run through that and we can.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Okay, great.
Okay, so Whitney, the other thing that would be great to have between now and our meeting on the 30th is an idea on how we plan to fill these positions,
Okay.
or how you plan to recruit,
Mhm.
if you will.
Mhm.
Okay, I'll make a motion to have a meeting on Friday, November 30th at 1:45 p.m.
I second that motion.
to discuss staffing, yeah.
Second.
Sure. It should, I guess, for discussion, should we make it 1:30, give ourselves a buffer between our meeting and not work with anybody? Yeah, I'll amend my motion to say 1:30.
Still second.
Any further board discussion? Any public comment?
I, Sierra Wolf, the Big Sky Community Organization, I would fully support you guys moving forward in that and would hope that you, looking at our organization as an example, as far as investing in expansion and the level of growth and impact that you can see from that. And sometimes it does take a little bit upfront to then see that return. Secondly, I would say, I would recommend you put it mandatory. They live in Big Sky. They cannot be a manager and be commuting in every day. That right there is setting the example for everybody else. With that said, I would encourage you to lean on your partners who have housing opportunity, condos, things. So if it's not somebody that already lives here that is your best applicant, you ensure that there is, you have several partners here that do own those and rent those out to understand what timeline there are some that are available and ensure that the rent is actually that percentage, that ideal percentage of what their housing costs of what their salary is that you're offering out there, so that you have that kind of set up for them. That right there is going to get you a better applicant. And if you advertise that in your application, that's going to give you some other people that may say, hey, I'd really like to do this, and I know I could live there, or hey, I'd really like to live there. This is a great opportunity for me if it's not applicants that didn't already live here. So just a couple of things to keep in mind in your advertising. If you're going to start like ASAP, maybe try and put a couple of those pieces together before you start advertising that, because that's going to get a whole different breadth of applications if you open it up that they can post it.
Allie.
I also think it's a great idea, particularly as you go to recruit future board members. I think having more staff will make that easier. And just out of curiosity, do you know how the percentages that you've been tracking there compare to other districts? Percentages of cost, administrative costs.
Right. We are the largest tax collector in the state. As you know, we actually collect almost 3 million more than the next largest tax collector, which is West Yellowstone. And they are incorporated, as well as who follows West Yellowstone is Whitefish and Red Lodge. So as far as their administrative costs, they are incorporated.
Well, they're part
community.
of municipal government, so they're
Right.
not separately identified as.
Yeah.
It's really hard to get apples
Right.
to apples.
Right.
Now
I
that
know.
we've looked at this, yeah.
If you wanted to look at the cost of running a city versus the cost of running resort tax, that information is available on the Montana State Local Government Center website. Be happy to show you how to
One
find
of
it.
7 special districts, have we looked at the other 6 districts in
Yeah.
our community and what percentage their admin and operations are of their budget?
Well,
What's the fire
Fire
district and
district
the
percentage?
transportation district as far as administration goes? It's
absolutely. I've learned through my research that it's not to exceed 25% income to expense ratio. So although it looks like we're having these huge jumps in income and expenses, the standard practice is 25%
And
income.
we're at 6 projected.
That's projected.
And I'm sorry, I should have, Allie Lancey for the record. I should have.
I should have.
I was out of order. All right.
She's wearing a baseball cap, but everybody knows who she is.
Miss Candace.
Candace Garstow, Big Sky Chamber of the Big Sky. I want to applaud you all for taking this step because in managing $7 million in your role as a community, I think, as you said, Kevin, it's long overdue. And Whitney and Kristen, thank you for holding down the fort in the absence. So really excited about that. Want to offer 2 resources through the chamber. The workspotmt.com is available to you for free. Please utilize it. It's a statewide Montana entrepreneurs promoting professional positions. So please get with RJ and get your login. Use that free resource to you. Secondly, mountaincareers.com is another startup out of Colorado that is working a lot with mountain resort communities. A lot of city government positions are advertised on that. Dale uses it extensively. I'm not sure of the prices on that, but it's a great resource. Back to just the point about the expense, the percentage of expense that we're looking to allocate. Coming from the nonprofit world, the Jim Collins Good to Great book, which is amazing, that looked at companies and what made them go good to great. There's a social sector addendum, and it really speaks to how you can't really speak to what is the cost to do your business in a nonprofit where profits are not the output. The output is how are you meeting your mission and serving your constituents. And right now, as Steve said, unfortunately, this organization isn't doing the best job that it could because it's not providing the resources it needs. So I would strongly encourage you not to get hooked on what percentage is this, as opposed to we have these monies, how are we best doing our job and meeting the needs of our community. So thank you again for all of us.
Okay, there's a motion on the table to have a special meeting on November 30th. The motion is seconded. It's been discussed. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Thank you.
Okay.
Amazing.
Next item of business, Miss Betsy, recommendation regarding multi-year appropriations.
Hi guys, and
Morning.
I haven't met board member Buzz yet, and nice to meet you. So I tried to put together everything on this issue and put it in your packet this time so that the board could look at all the different things. You'll recall this all arose out of a multi-year agreement that was proposed by the Big Sky Fire District. And I had said, no, we really can't do this in an interlocal agreement. This is a funding process, not something done through interlocal agreement. And I had looked at an attorney general opinion and our past practices in doing that. We got an opinion from the fire district attorney and one of the board members who said, hey, the interlocal agreement statute is really much broader than I had construed it. There's nothing preventing the board in the interlocal agreement process to do this. Those opinions really look at our ordinance and the annual funding process, which I think is another important part of this. There's some ambiguity in the attorney general opinion that I relied upon in terms of kind of in the appropriation process, saying one board does not bind another in terms of appropriation. And I attached that attorney general opinion for the board. So I just kind of, that's a very broad brush in terms of getting to this issue. It's a complex one. It involves really goes to the core nature of the operation of the appropriation process and the interlocal agreement process. And as you'll see in my memo, I recommend doing an attorney general opinion request on it. I relied primarily on an attorney general opinion in reaching my recommendation to the board. There's some ambiguity in it. I am hopeful that we could do an opinion memo and get it to the Attorney General's office fairly quickly. The fire district attorney would be, welcome to put in a memo at the same time. Anybody else who's an interested party can put in memos in front of the Attorney General's office to be considered. And then the Attorney General's opinion would have the force and effect of law. I don't think there'd be any problem asking, I think Marty Lambert, is Marty still the county attorney there in
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
he was elected.
Yeah, okay, so, and I know Marty from long ago, and I don't think there'd be any problem getting Marty to request that. He'd be the one who'd have to request it for us. It's very much a typical AG opinion request. You know, what is the scope and nature of the authority of the board to enter into this kind of interlocal agreement, and how does that relate to the appropriation process? So anyway, I recommend doing an attorney general opinion on that. It does take a while, probably at least 90 days. That's why I'd like to get it in by, if the board agrees, by say, well, you know, mid-December. And if we have 90 days on the opinion, we should get it back by February or March, and well advance of the next appropriation cycle.
Betsy, thank you for the quick overview. I'm just going to back up a second, mainly for the benefit of Mr. Davis, as well as make sure I understand everything correctly in my head, and I guess for the members of the audience too. The history on this is, you know, I kind of started this because we have a 3-year agreement with Madison County, Gallatin County, and the Resort Tax Board of Fund Share. And where I say I started this, I had approached the fire chief about whether or not we should enter into a 3-year agreement with them as well. I threw out the question, and so the fire department ran with it, came up with an MOU on a 3-year agreement. Betsy has let us came up with a contract, and our counsel Betsy has opined that an interlocal agreement is not the appropriate vehicle for an agreement with the fire department, and it's kind of brought us here today. So we have 2 attorneys saying that that represent the fire department that yes, we can do this, and our own counsel saying that we shouldn't or can't. And I feel like we have this conundrum. I also realize that this, I have the concern that this could open Pandora's box with all our other applicants coming in here and saying we want a multi-year agreement. It would certainly make it easier not to have to go through the resort tax appropriations every year.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I want to tread very carefully on this issue because of how this works. Steve, I absolutely get you. I'm just the one thing, Betsy, and I believe you touched on this, I would like to know the exact process to come up with an attorney's AG's opinion. And I also want to say, should this board look out to announce another attorney besides Betsy to look at this issue so we get more and more advice? Because I don't like being in between dueling opinions on, and I'm just trying to gather as much information for this board so that we move forward. Mr. Johnson.
Just wanted to stop the thought that this is a way for everybody to avoid the allocations process. But I think there's an opportunity to integrate a 3-year option into the allocation process appropriately. So I mean,
yeah, just good point.
Don't run away with this is going to open Pandora's box unnecessarily. I think once again, if we get some good advice, there's a way to structure this in a way that achieves the objectives of our applicants who would like a little predictability in their funding stream and our legal obligations.
Good point.
Needs some research.
Yeah.
And Kevin?
Yes.
I think Steve's right in the sense that it doesn't really open it up to all the other applicants. The other applicants, in order to be able to enter into the interlocal agreement, have to be another governmental entity. So really this is, the whole idea is this another governmental entity? Another thing pushing for this interlocal agreement is not only that it is another governmental entity, but fire protection, just like law enforcement protection, are sort of the organic purposes of the resort tax and passing the resort tax initially. So if you did want to carve out a interlocal agreement with a fire district, if you decide to just go that route rather than going through, I mean, that is an option at this point. My opinion's hanging out there. You know, I've done this for 30 years and worked on the Commission on Local Government 40 years ago. And it just, you know, but if the board wants to enter into an interlocal agreement and go ahead and go through that process with the fire district, and kind of just forego another opinion, my feelings aren't hurt. I mean, you know, it's really up to the board at this point. And I do recommend against it. It hasn't been done as far as I know, but I mean, would other applicants for the resort tax challenge such a 3-year agreement? Those would probably have to be the people who challenge something like this. And that's what we have to look at too. Would they challenge it? Would they have standing to challenge it when there's so much discretion in the board? That's something else for the board to look at. Anyway, one option is for the board to just go ahead and do it and say, we understand our concerns of our attorney, but we'd like to give them more, give the fire district more comfort and enter into a multi-year agreement. I do think that you might consider also, there are such things, and I'm sure you're aware of them, as statutory appropriations on the statewide level. I didn't go into that in my memo because there are certain criteria that statutory appropriations have to meet. You'll recall that there's a specific statute that allows ongoing appropriations out of certain funds without biennial legislative action. And another option here would be to enter into such a statutory appropriation only through our ordinance. So we would say X amount of the resort district's budget goes to firefighting, you know, fire protection, depending upon certain criteria and conditions that we set. The problems with both going forward with an agreement and doing some kind of statutory-like or an ordinance appropriation is we still have this Attorney General opinion out there, right? We have, and that's why going to the Attorney General and asking for clarification on that opinion, I think is a really good route. You can hire another attorney to give you more advice on this issue. If you'd like to do that, that's fine. You'll get a different opinion. I mean, every attorney gives a different opinion. That's why that's why we have lawsuits. So, and it's one of the reasons we do, right? There's very little concurrence in attorney opinions. Anyway, those are my 2 cents. There's another couple options there.
No, and I appreciate it. Sorry, it's Mr. Schultz, or sorry, Mr. Johnson.
I don't care what we call this, and I think calling it an interlocal agreement kind of raises the bar in some way.
Yeah.
We are specifically empowered by Montana 76-1541 to enter into contracts. And I think on a very simple basis, what our applicants are looking for is a contract that provides them the predictability that they see. So right now we can do that. I think, you know, our ordinance 9901 is kind of locked into an annual allocation cycle, but we can rewrite 9901. So yeah. I think, you know, we have within our reach, I think, what is being asked of us right now. And, you know, as Betsy has said, we can just do that. You know, we can research this further if we want, but I mean, again, I think our applicants are asking for some predictability. I think we have the legal legally enabling stuff in the Montana State Constitution to allow us to do it. And beyond that, we can take care of the details that are our own business. So, and with Betsy, I just wanted you to comment a little bit about, you know, the ambiguity with regard to the existing Attorney General's opinion. That specifically addresses what legislatures can and can't do. I don't think we are one of those. So is that the ambiguity you're talking about, or could you elaborate on that some?
Well, no, not necessarily, but that's a good question. Certainly the board has the three, exercises the three types of duties like the executive, legislative, and quasi-judicial functions. So when we look at legislative authority or executive administrative authority or your quasi-judicial authority in enforcing the tax, we look to what, how the courts and how the attorney generals have defined legislative functions. And so there are times when legislative functions, as defined in these in attorney general opinions or court opinions, may not be applicable to a local government. But I think overall, the definition of how appropriations and legislative functions work should definitely guide the board when they engage in legislative-like functions. And of course, the most legislative-like function that you do is your appropriations, your annual appropriations. So I do think that the Attorney General opinion has persuasive, if not somewhat controlling authority. The ambiguity I was referring to was the language in the Attorney General opinion that refers to contracting authority, and that was relied upon by the Big Sky Fire District's attorney that says, look, see here, even an exception to this appropriation arises in contract. It's very unclear in that opinion if that really carves out an exception to multi-year appropriations. And that was the ambiguity I was referring to.
Thanks, Betsy.
Kevin?
Yes, Mr. Schultz, please.
Yeah, Kevin, you know, the reason we even are talking about interlocal agreements is because, you know, from the start, the, you know, it was always considered by the board through legal opinion through Mona Jameson that boards could not commit allocations on future revenues. That's where we turned around this year and made an amendment that we could do longer term allocations, but we had to do it with the money we had in the bank, not on the revenues of future boards and such. You know, some of this we can get different opinions and such. You know, it has to go through our county attorney. I would think that would be, once again, some legal filter, whether it would move up the ladder to the attorney general and such. But, you know, wouldn't it be good, you know, as far as Betsy's suggestion, just to clear this matter up for once and for all and not be arguing between what attorney you can bring to the table?
Agreed. Can I ask a quick question? And Mike, this is directed back at you because you've got the most history with this board. Who is our county attorney? What county do we go with? We have the BSRAD straddles both Madison and Gallatin.
I think it could be either, frankly.
I mean, the
Get them both to opine, and then we'll have two different opinions on this matter. No.
well,
You know, I wouldn't be surprised if you went to one that they might consult the other, if they're smart.
Question. I know that this leads to the county attorney if we're going to an AG opinion. I just don't know what county.
in order to get an attorney general's opinion, you have to have stand.
Yeah.
And we don't.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the way it's working. But I think Mike's right. I mean, if we approached one, they would clearly touch base with the other, and we might just approach both at the same time. out of just courtesy.
Yeah. You know, I just think that would be good to clear this up because it's just not the interlocal agreement. It's whether we can even be committing funds or, you know, future revenues. We've, you know, and to Kevin's point, there must be some, you know, something in government that makes sure that any board or you know, any political body cannot spend all of the revenue of the future. So, you know, there's something that's we will learn something out of it, and we won't be spending money. You know, one of my questions is, Betsy, is that, you know, what is the cost of doing this before we enter into something? I'd like to know what that could cost the board, cost the district, asking for this.
What the cost would be my putting together a memo to the county attorney, and hopefully then that is kind of a pass-through to the attorney general. That's the way we used to see it frequently in the years that I administered the attorney general opinion process. So I would think it wouldn't take me more than, I don't know, 5 or 6 hours to put together a comprehensive opinion at the most. So that would be about $1,000 for my time. And then it goes up to the public, you know, representatives through the county attorneys. If you want to do both, that sounds good. I could easily have a phone call with both of them and tell them what's going on. And then there's no cost associated with the attorney general opinion process.
Okay. Sorry, Mike. Steve's got something to say.
Okay.
The cost of doing this is insignificant. To me, the cost of doing this that we don't want to risk is the cost of possibly getting an answer that we don't think we can live with. I mean,
I'm not sure.
Steve, you're saying that we can't live with, you know, that means that you have that you want something possibly different than what the law says. Don't we want to do what the law says?
I think we need to do what our community needs us to do. And I think we need to find a legal way to do that, which may take some work. But if it is appropriate, given the level to which we are funding certain entities around here, to responsibly commit 3 years at a time so that they can manage their financials appropriately, I think we need to figure out a way to do that. And risking getting an attorney general's opinion that says you can never do that is something that I'm not willing to do right now. I think we need to think about this a whole lot more before pulling the trigger on getting an answer that we're not sure about, or at least I'm not sure about.
It is one option, and Betsy, I appreciate, you know, your estimate to provide a memo. I feel like we got a lot of information on here. We got letters from attorneys, we got Betsy's letter. There's one option, and I'm throwing this out there, just to go meet with our 2 county attorneys with what we're dealing with. I mean, what's the responsibility of the county attorney to help us free of charge? Because they're our county attorney.
Well, I think I don't know what, I think that can vary according to each county attorney and what they view their responsibility is.
Okay.
Well, we got a 50-50 shot.
Well, for what it's worth, I've been around the horn with Marty Lambert on this earlier on an attorney general's opinion. And you get Marty involved, he starts to take charge. And how much we'll be in control of the situation at that point, I don't honestly know. And again, I think we need to think long and hard about what is it that we need to do and what are our options to get there. And I think that's a fairly meaty subject at this point, with varying points of view.
You know, I would be willing to reach out to Mr. Lambert on the Gallatin side, and I'm trying to remember the county attorney on the Madison side. Chris, is it? Yes, I won't know his name.
So,
I think to see if we can get some time with them, and I think if there's another board member that would like to go meet with me. This is a big topic.
You're going to drag me along, I guarantee you.
Okay.
Kevin, I'd ask to be involved in that meeting. I think it would be a little odd not to have your attorney there, at least by phone.
Yeah, okay, Elizabeth, we will keep you in the loop on that. So Steve and I will reach out to the two county attorneys and we will keep Betsy in the loop. I would like to meet with both the county attorneys at once, ideally. That sound all right?
I'm losing you, Kevin.
I'm sorry, Betsy, all I was saying is I would like to reach out to both our county attorneys and see if we can set up a meeting with the two of them, whether it's by telephone or not, to go over this issue and let them know what we're facing. And Steve has offered to help me and we will keep you in the loop.
Yeah, just not keeping her on the loop. Can you have her as part of those meetings?
I'm sorry, Mike. Yeah, that was what I was implying. I didn't equate that. I will let Betsy invite her to the meeting with the two county attorneys.
Okay, thanks.
I think in the long run, Kevin, that'll save you a lot of time because I can give them, you know, a kind of a synopsis of what's going on legally and the concerns legally.
Okay, and I feel like, Betsy, yes, you can do that verbally, but I feel like you've given us enough written documentation that we can give to them. They understand your opinion, they understand the other, and hopefully they can help us navigate this. Steve, what you said, I think, is very appropriate. You know, we have to adapt as this community evolves. And if there is if we need to come up with a mechanism to, and I'll just single out the fire department, to work with the fire department to make them more successful, then I think it's worth exploring how we do that. I appreciate what Mike said. We do not want to do anything that's illegal, or we want to do this right. And if the only thing we got to do is change our ordinance, then we can amend the ordinance. But I'm just saying, let's do this in a correct fashion. Both of you are right. Figure out a way to thread it.
Sounds good.
Any other board discussion on this item? Any other comments from the public? Okay, moving on the agenda.
We should consolidate Betsy's agenda items while she's on the line. So she is down here, if you'd like, and then also she has the closed meeting agenda item.
Okay, which it's going to be impossible. I don't want to close the meeting and go back into an open meeting, if you don't mind. Why don't we, if you guys don't mind, these are just discussion items that we have left. If we could get through those quickly, and then we can keep Betsy on. So the next agenda item is appropriation application executive summary discussion. And we have something to review.
Yes, and what I put together for you to review is essentially the first page that the applicants would fill out in the new appropriation cycle. And once we have more staff, I feel like this can be fleshed out more with past board decisions and how that influenced the appropriation longevity of that entity. But this is essentially just the basics of what we would ask of the appropriation entities this time for the first kind of meat of what we would then keep on file for future years. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
And I want to remind the board that this ended up on the blacklist with their current staffing structure. So until we have more staff, this is. Go ahead.
Also, having done the backstrokes through our ordinances a couple of times recently, there are all kinds of details on what's in the application that are itemized in 99-01. So we got to make sure that any changes that we're proposing can be accommodated with in the ordinance as it is written now, or whether there are implied changes to the ordinance in what we're doing. So that's another dimension of this thing.
I'll give my quick comments. So I just reviewing this this week, Whitney, it just seems like it's a lot of info just for the executive summary.
Okay,
You know, when we talked about this, I was open up one pager for each application, and I felt like there's a lot of info on here. But that's my just one overarching comment. The things that I did not see on here that I would like to see on the executive summary is a brief description of the project that they're requesting funds from. And if we're just
can you restate that?
brief description of the use of the funds that they're requesting.
Well, okay.
We're gonna have them
So I
fill out a
think-
table.
I think that's in the application. So this is the front page to
Right.
the application. Are we on the same page?
Maybe we're talking, and I'm sorry, I'm weighing in late on this, and you guys have put a lot more thought of it. I always look at it as an executive summary. It summarizes what's in the application.
Okay,
And it's a very concise one
great.
pager of the document that it's summarized. And
Yeah.
that's how I was approaching it, and all my comments are related to that theory.
Okay.
So, but I haven't, there's others.
Okay,
that
great.
take this direction.
And my takeaway from the last meeting was that this was more of a historical document that just brought new board members up to speed, and then past board members didn't necessarily pay attention to.
Okay,
That's how I read it.
okay.
So executive summary is probably, I mean, this
Maybe
is the entity's dossier. And kind of background information on the entity that would not need to be repeated in application after application after application after application.
Okay.
So,
It's just the term. My comments are not appropriate. Mr. Davis?
I know this is not one of our top priorities, given our document like that would really ease the workload on applicants.
Okay.
It would be helpful for somebody like me to do to the board. But I also think the current process is way too much. I think that if we're going to expand our staff, what Kevin's talking about, in terms of if that kind of is going to be done as part of the process, then I would hold heartedly support them. I don't know about doing that in this, these modifications, but
Sarah and I have been working with Whitney and Kristen on the whole idea of streamlining the application. And a major part of streamlining the information is to remove a lot of the narrative that gets repeated, and focus on filling out, making entries into a table with discrete elements of data that are really germane to the annual allocation process. And if you need to refer to the other stuff is available, but it's just not, you know, in a binder that thick with the applications every year. It's just coming in a different way. So I think there's general receptivity to what we put on the table with regard to this. This was, you know, if we pull a lot of stuff out, what are we pulling out and where is it going to be? That's the subject of.
I understand. I will also point out we do not, it's on our blacklist.
Right.
And so whether, I don't know what else to do on it today, just because it's not going to get done until we staff up. Can we talk about this more in December, January?
The issue is if you want to do anything about it, tick tock. I mean, the allocation cycle is coming up. If we want to, and again, some of this stuff does relate to things like the ordinance. I mean, the ordinance details all these kinds of things. So if we really want to put together a complete package in time for the next allocation cycle,
You're a volunteer.
well, Sarah and I have been trying to do this.
Yes, it's true.
yeah, well, give us a recommendation. You guys have been working on this.
Well, my
So-
first recommendation.
Excuse me, Kevin, can I just say on these criteria, I haven't had a chance to chat with Whitney about it, but one of the criteria I think that you see in other resort areas and of course, under our section 18 of our original ordinance the activities have to occur, it has to be for activities that occur within the district. And that has been a concern in some of the other resort districts that I represent. And I would just make sure that we also have that as part of our application process.
It is, and it's actually outlined on this executive summary.
Okay, I didn't see that there, but maybe I just am not seeing it.
Number 5.
It's number 5 on the list.
Oh, that's just the entity within the resort district. I saw that, but it has to be for services that occur within the district.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, makes sense. Candace.
I just think a lot of this conversation stemmed out of perhaps my 2 organizations' applications this past application cycle, because both Visit Big Sky, which was only born in 2013, and the Chamber went through strategic planning and moved fiscal sponsorship of tourism dollars from the Chamber to Visit Big Sky, and we had to kind of restate the mission, vision, values, and goals of each of those organizations. And then we had 3 new board members, 3 new board members, and so how do you do all that in the allocation cycle? And it's really difficult representing 2 organizations and 2 applications to meet with the 5 of you separately on all of that. And so, you know, I think we would enjoy making some kind of process that allowed us to give, here's who we are and what we do, you know, here's why we're here. But if you could please, I would respectfully request that if you are going to change the application, please don't make that first time heavy lift in the confines of the allocation cycle, because I'm doing 2 organizations, and to do all of that anew with extensive data being gathered for the first time, it's really, really difficult. And then also doing, we do a 3rd one for the state of Montana separately at the same time.
And Candace, sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah.
Everything on here is not, you've already done it.
Okay.
It would just be removing it around. And I think, so we are talking apples and oranges, and I apologize for my confusion. I like the term dossier on this, and it's it's so we don't have to read a book on the Chamber every time, because for existing board members, they've already read that book, and so we're trying to.
And the book is available for
the
new
book
board
is available.
members.
So
I mean, certainly the idea is to simplify the application process and to focus again. I think my head thinks in terms of pictures. A table that details projects, and for each project, some key things we want to know, and fill out the table. You know, finite spaces.
Well, that's where we're headed, is an electronic application.
Yeah.
Right. Certainly make it easier to pull information out and populate the spreadsheets. I always end up filling with the information. So.
Well, there were a number of dimensions to what we were talking about and thinking about, and you know, one of the fundamental dimensions is resort tax has been in existence in this community for 20 years. The Chamber of Commerce has made at least 20 applications. You know, and they all kind of look alike after a while. We know about the Chamber of Commerce, and yes, we may need an update from here to there, but we have a whole lot that we know about that entity and its track record with us and everything else. I mean, that can be extracted and maintained in a dossier. You know, part of this was for, you know, repeat applicants. It probably makes sense to also have a conversation from time to time on a programmatic basis. Just talk to us, what's new, that sort of thing, independently from the application process. The application process, we'd like to get very, very direct. You know, a limited amount of really important data. And the other part we've talked about is we have suggested that we separate or submit questions to applicants in advance of the Q&A session, so that we would have to meet and discuss questions, but you know, rather than getting everybody up on stage and asking them a question they've never heard before, we'd rather give people a chance to think about the answer and give us an answer, as opposed to the standard answer that we get these days, which is, I'll need to research that and get back to you. That's not productive from anybody's standpoint. So we're talking about a lot of changes to the application itself, the application process, how we manage information about our applicants. It's a pretty comprehensive package, and you know, it's on the blacklist right now. So
Did we discuss this anymore?
Kevin?
Like I said,
Kevin?
on lens. Mike,
Yeah, no, I think, I understand when Steve first brought this and Sarah first brought this up. Just be careful when you do the dossier that you don't do something like down at the bottom there when it's talking about FTEs, things that might change. The dossier needs to be about what your company or organization is and and things that aren't going to change. If you start getting things that are likely to change, like FTEs and such, then you're defeating the purpose. You got to be changing them both all the time. So just be careful on if you try to stay consistent on stuff that will not change from year to year, and then the dossier stands by itself and doesn't have to be redone all the time.
agreed. And I'm sorry, I'm not, to the point, I looked at this through a different lens. I'm not even prepared to provide feedback on this because of how I was reviewing this. So if it's okay with the board, I'd like to just move this to December agenda item and continue on with our agenda.
I think what this discussion has disclosed that we all know is that the appropriation process needs a lot of work and steps are being taken, but they're steps, not an end result. I don't think we can expect a perfect appropriation package ready because of the staffing. So we'll just keep making those baby steps. And one of those, which leans heavily on the applicants as opposed to the staff.
Okay, I'm moving on to the next agenda item, which is release of draft minutes, and this is the discussion item. I just had one question on why would we release the minutes in 6-month increments? And I didn't know if we should post those, as soon as they're approved at the next meeting. And is it a staffing issue? What was the thought on just doing 6-month tranches?
I can show you on the website. It's just a tremendous amount of information. Do you think that would? I'll let Kristen take it. She's our minutes gal.
That's just how it's been done, and it kind of consolidates the information on that page. But I think that there would be a way to say, do it so that it looks more consolidated than that, but still posted monthly. If that makes sense. And Natalie, our website guru, could probably help with that if you want to post on that.
I was just a question, Kristen, so I'm not married to any outcome. I do think we could probably have, the last 12 months of meeting minutes by month on here and everything else in an archive folder by year. And you could just go back, which may be a little bit more user friendly than having, anyway.
we should look at another county does it.
I don't know.
Well, the county has a lot of different moving parts.
The reason this was brought forward is because we tend to get questions from the public who want our minutes right after the meeting has happened. And so, of course, we can't do that until the meeting minutes are approved at the next meeting, right? And so we just wanted something in writing as a policy that has a motion on the table from the board that says the board has said this is how we release our minutes. We're not going to give you the draft copy. Now, if we would like to get the draft copy or talk about that, then that's fine. Okay.
And sorry, Whitney, I think you're focusing us and we're not taking action on this on the meeting, but I agree. It should not be available to the public.
Nobody else.
Yeah.
Open meeting public law statement within 72 hours after the approval minutes. Like, so look at open meeting public law, what is required. That's what you use as your response to that individual.
If I understand this right, you're asking for a policy about how we release our minutes.
Right.
This is a discussion item. So could we include that as an action item at 1:30 on the 30th of this month? So we have 2 action items. just to get it off our plate.
Right.
I mean,
Do we actually not have a policy now?
We don't, no. And so that was one of Jamie's big things before he left, is he wanted to start solidifying some of these decisions for future boards to reference back on how past boards done this, as opposed to.
Well,
I would be fine. I just think we limit it to when they're available to the public, and we do something like 72 hours after
Well,
they've been.
Candace is quoting state law. I mean, we are obligated by state law, whether we make a policy or not, we are obligated by state law
Okay.
to put them on the website within no later than 72 hours after they are approved.
I don't know if it's put them on the website. I think they need to be
Make them
available to the public,
Okay.
and that's what I'm hearing from Kristen and Whitney is there's this, how do we want to handle that? I would be fine if all we solve in the December or our interim meeting is they're available to the public.
They're available in
hours
the
after
office.
we approve them, and then we can figure this out as you work with the
Adding a file
website.
to the website shouldn't be that hard.
No.
Well,
It would just be reorganizing that page.
Yeah. But I also want to be sensitive to setting a policy that we need to make sure that we can fulfill and accomplish. And if we say they're going to be on the website 72 hours after they've been approved, are they going to be on there? And I think available to the public is what our obligation, and I assume if I read state law, that's what it would say. They're available to the public.
Well, and let's also be honest to ourselves. How many times does this happen a month?
It seems to come in clusters.
Depends on the
what
issue.
kind of issue.
Not that, this is not.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is really a staff thing to do. Just tell us what you need.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
And usually we've been introducing a new policy or procedure, a new business each meeting, and then it's been transferred to old business for action. And in this interim plan that I outlined, no more policies or procedures will be introduced while we're going through this strategic session, because that tends to fall on my plate. Okay.
Okay. Moving on. Next agenda item is the annual fee resolution. Okay, we're back to Betsy.
Hi, I'm going to defer to Whitney to describe what this is in the first instance.
Do you want to take it or do you want me to? Okay. Yeah. So basically, we're trying to encourage everyone to pay their taxes online.
Mm-hmm.
And as part of that, we would talk about the option of having a processing fee or something if you are not paying online. And so UniRems, our software, said that some of their other jurisdictions have done that, and the way they did it was by creating a resolution. The board decides on the fee and approves the resolution, and that's how the fee is made. But we were asking for thoughts on that and how that could be done.
What kind of fees have others done? A flat dollar amount or a percentage?
Yes, usually a flat amount. I think the highest was $20 in one. Some are lower. So.
And Kristen, I assume that fee is based on some calculation of staff time to do it, and so you base it on. Yeah.
I don't think it has to be rationalized in any. I mean, we want people to pay online.
Mm-hmm.
So we could make it $1 million and they'll pay online. I mean, if we're trying to incent behavior that is constructive in terms of our operations. So
my question is, how many don't pay online? And is there a certain profile of them, of those that don't pay online, or in terms of scale of their business or anything like that?
We could talk about that in a closed meeting.
Well, let's not talk.
We don't have to identify.
Yeah, my question, Buzz, along that is, I don't want to force people to use computers if they don't want to use computers, but I also understand that we want to make it efficient on the staff, and as long as we were recouping the cost of staff time to manually enter it, that'd be.
It's the way business is done these days. I mean, please. You can pay your bills and probably do right here. I mean, we're just asking to, a little bit of rhythm with our operations. I think it's an entirely appropriate thing to do.
Well, I suggest that as long as we you consider it reasonable based on your research, give us a call.
Yeah, I think we just need Betsy's help.
Drafting a resolution. Okay.
Right, and usually when organizations do this kind of fee, I think a resolution's appropriate. It's probably sufficient. But as Whitney and I talked about it, this struck me as not so much a penalty, although it is an encouragement to use the online. It also should have a rational basis and be related to the extra administrative cost that is associated with having to process the paper remittances.
Agreed. Okay, so do we think we'll have a resolution that could be proposed to us at the December board meeting with your work with Betsy?
Can we have you give Betsy direction to do that?
Betsy, well, I'll make a motion to give Betsy direction to work with our staff to draft a resolution to be voted on at the next meeting. Is there any further board discussion? Is there any comment from the public?
Do bear in mind, our ordinance already allows remitters to retain 5% of what they remit for their costs. So, you know, I mean, given that they have that, I mean, they are funded to do it our way. So you know, they can be, I mean, we can indicate for the 5% you're retaining, we want this stuff done online. And if you don't, you're going to give us some of that 5% back. It's kind of the message. Fair is fair.
Fair is fair. All right. Any other comment? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes. Okay. Any other public comment before we go into our closed meeting?
I'm sorry.
Please.
Candace Strauss, we have, I just want to read the invitation to all of you. We're going to join us at the event on Thursday at the Big Real Estate Discovery Center. 10:30. Some of yours. And then tomorrow.
It is tomorrow.
The other one, in putting the chamber hat back on, December 5th is our Eggs and Issues, which will deal with tourism and the economic impact of tourism on our community and state, leading into the Joint County Commission meeting, so 8:30 to 10, and then 10 to noon at Lone Peak Cinema. And I've worked with Whitney, and I know Whitney here with that, but if there are any other agenda items, I know Lori is finalizing that Joint County Commission meeting agenda as well. So we look forward to hopefully seeing any, not all of you there as well.
Thank you for those comments, and thanks for getting Cam Shawley here. I think that's exciting, and that's a big deal for those types. All right, any other public comment? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session.
I'll track it down. Thanks. Not urgent, but we'll find time.
I'll make the motion to go into closed session.
Second.
Any discussion?
You can just announce that.
Bye-bye, Santa.